Well, my name is Brinsley McNamara and welcome to the Weird Ireland podcast. If you're ever out exploring the countryside here in Ireland, it ought not take long till you come across a wrought iron gate in a field, a big candlestick holder stuck into an old church wall, or spot an antique ploughhead in the back of a run-down shed. These everyday and necessary tools for folk life were at one time the exclusive produce of blacksmiths up and down the country. However, as today's guest knows, the ancient practice of blacksmithing in Ireland is more than a heritage skill. For him, it's a living trade. Your friendly neighbourhood blacksmith, Reece Foster. How are you getting on today, Reece?
I'm getting on well, thank you.
So can you describe to us, Reece, actually, first off, where we're recording this podcast right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're working out of the Lion's Forge in Mountshannon, which is a 270-year-old forge that I'm the caretaker of in the town. I'm good friends with the Lyons family, and as a deal to help me forge in the building, I help fix it up and repair it.
All right, fair play. You're a traditional blacksmith, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
How did you get into that?
So it was about a couple of years ago. I was a stonemason's apprentice at the time, and I had a big shake-up in my life and decided it was probably best to do something that I loved. And my gran would always tell me, do what you love and love what you do. And that's exactly what I did. So I picked up a free year-long course in blacksmithing from the College of Further Education in Capamore, just outside of Limerick. And that's what brought me into the craft that I'm in now.
Brilliant, awesome, yeah. And what kind of things do you mostly make as a blacksmith?
So what sells as a blacksmith at the moment most reliably is jewellery. Mm-hmm. So I make a lot of jewellery out of copper, steel, wrought iron and bog iron that I smelt with friends of mine. And then along that I make other types of sort of sculpture, or I make tooling.
Oh, cool. What exactly is bog iron?
So bog iron is iron that grows on the bog. It's a biological iron. It's formed through a biological method. So the bog is very acidic, and that allows two different types of bacteria to live and thrive in the bog. One which takes the free-flowing iron oxide, which is the rust that comes from the Earth's crust, and converts it to an iron salt, a ferric salt. And then the second bacteria eats that and converts it back into iron oxide in a more condensed sort of pumice stone-style collection of iron, either as small as your fingernail or as big as your head. Over thousands of years, that can form into an iron table underneath the bog. And an iron table is where the water is flowing, it grows, and so the water flows in a different direction, and then it grows in that spot, the water flows in a different direction, that grows in that spot, and over thousands of years, that can sort of form into about a kilometre wide area of iron. And because of the turf cutting in Ireland, those deposits underneath the turf are exposed. So my friends and I can collect them to smelt and forge.
So you go out and collect it, with your hands or with equipment and yourselves?
Yeah. So we'd go out and collect
pickaxes?
Not really even. We'd go out with shovels and rakes because it's exposed. The turf cutters wouldn't have wanted to put the iron in the fires, so they left it.
Right.
So we'd go to specific fields around Ireland, collect it after getting permission from the land, and take it up into bags and then smelt it in different festivals.
Is it a uniquely Irish material? Well, not uniquely, there's bogs in other parts of the world, but being that we've certainly got quite a lot here, we're kind of known for it. Is it quite an Irish metal in a way?
It's extremely Irish.
Yeah.
So there's only a few places with this rich an environment of bog iron. So Ireland has an extremely large abundance of it. But so did the Vikings, and so does parts of America. The Vikings specifically would have made all of their armour, all of their weapons and everything out of bog iron. And that's how they made it to different parts of the world, because their ships would have been made with wood and something called ship nails, which were nails that were made out of the bog iron that they forged and smelted themselves, and what still remains to this day because of its unique qualities.
And its unique qualities, am I right in saying is it tougher, or does it have longer lasting ability? What's its difference between?
No, actually, it's like wrought iron but softer, in that it has high ductility, high high malleability and ability to shift and shape, but because of its chemical composition and lamination, which is the sort of gaps in between, it kind of acts like, imagine a piece of wood and you're splitting pieces of wood. It splits like wood.
Okay.
It's got grains because the granular structure of iron chemically wants to form linear structures chemically. So on those layers are glass layers, layers of flux and slag, and that's what sticks it together, allows it to be forged very easy by a blacksmith. And it's a beautiful material to move. But because of those layers of glass, it preserves very well as opposed to the modern steels, which are granular, sand-like, which decompose in a very even, uniform manner, unlike wrought iron. Reason why we still have wrought iron gates to this day, whereas sort of steel in the modern age would rust away to pieces.
Well, there's quite a lot of chemistry, almost physics behind all this,
Lots
really, isn't
lots
there?
of it, yeah. And different types of steel. There's loads of different types of steel even that you have to think and manage. You've got your mild steels, medium to high carbon steels. Medium high carbon can be case hardened, but mild steels can't. And then high carbon can be case hardened and sort of tempered and hardened in different ways then as well. And then you've got your wrought iron, bog iron, and all sorts. So, it depends on the sort of carbon content mainly.
Right. Ruby, well, I was going to ask you next. So in this forge here, what is I'm not that good with terminology. Oftentimes, I've not been here like more than a few minutes at the moment now. That's a kiln over there, right?
No,
that's not. No. Okay, what's that called?
That's the forge.
That's the forge.
That is
okay.
the forge.
So what is your setup inside the forge, and what do you do with these things?
So I'll describe it to the people who can't see it. So what you have is a big forge, about 2.5 meters wide, made out of stone and lime pointed together to create sort of both a flue, which is sort of the exhaust pipe to the chimney, and also the area where the fire is contained. Now, there's two different types of fire usually used by a blacksmith, called a side blast and a bottom blast. We're in this forge using a side blast, which is connected to a pair of double-chambered bellows, which are bellows which have been split into two chambers, so it continues to blow even when you're working.
Okay, groovy. And yeah, you've got the anvil there in the middle as well. You've got...
Yeah, so the anvil is there, and it's the original stump. I don't know how old the stump is, but it's definitely over 100 years.
The tree stump underneath it, you mean?
Yep, yeah. And it's possibly made out of elm.
Oh.
Now, as everybody generally knows, the Dutch elm disease killed off all of the elm in the country, in most countries, so it doesn't grow as well as other areas anymore. It only gets up to about 20 meters and then dies. But the stump there is, like maybe a meter wide. So it was a big tree, and elm, it has the ability of sort of resisting heat, which would be perfect for the blacksmith. So you can put hot metal on the top of that stump and it won't burn because it's resistant to the metal.
I noticed that we were doing before we started recording this, we were doing a bit of you were doing a bit of blacksmithery. Is that these right?
Blacksmithing, yeah.
Over
forging
there.
Or blacksmithing.
Yeah. And we did see some hot metal fall onto the wood and not a mark on it or anything like that.
And as I said, it's about 100 years old, more than that, and hardly has any marks in it.
Is there many other traditional forges like this in the country, would you think? Or
not many to my knowledge. Now I say to my knowledge because I haven't seen all of them, and I don't want to quote that there aren't many, because there are. It's just that they aren't functional, or they're sitting in somebody's yard and they're just not being used. A friend of mine recently, Alan, who is one of my smelting team, he found a forge recently near the Burren that he lives beside, near Ennistimon. And he found it in the Burren, quite central, and nobody had really known about it. And it's about 220 years old.
Oh, it was a pre-existing one that he found.
Yeah, pre-existing one. And
wow, brilliant.
It wasn't known of, but it still had the bellows and it still had the forge. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of forges sitting around and not being used or falling into disrepair. Some are being used as just sheds now,
Right.
because there's no blacksmiths anymore. So, which is a shame.
Well, is there many? I mean, you know other people in the in the trade, in the industry, or in the guild. Is there many other active blacksmiths in Ireland at the moment?
There's quite a few active blacksmiths. Not as many as you'd hope. But there's a great deal of blacksmiths. Like, I couldn't even list off the top of my head. There's James O'Connor, which is working with Owen Reardon. He does incredible traditional work. Absolutely amazing blacksmith, very, very skilled and versed. Mark Dillon, which is Mark Dillon from Mad Hammers. He makes beautiful tooling and hammer work, and loads of other blacksmiths, really. Farriers, blacksmiths, tool makers, all sorts. So yeah.
If I was to has the practice of blacksmithing changed much over time? Like, let's say if you rewound 300 years, it's 1724. Would what a blacksmith did back then be similar or different to what you're doing right now, or other blacksmiths?
What I'm doing in the forge here, because I don't have any electricity in the forge, is as traditional as you can get, and pretty much as similar as you can get to what they'd be doing back then. The only difference is blacksmiths wouldn't be working alone. Blacksmiths traditionally would have an apprentice and another worker, and they'd have sledgehammers for sledging against the anvil, and they wouldn't be working alone. It was a very much a community-led sort of craft. So to be doing this alone isn't traditional at all.
Right.
But to be doing the skills that I'm doing, I'm working 100-year-old bellows in a 270-year-old forge without electricity, with only hammers and tongs. That's about as traditional as you can get back to the however long you want to go.
Getting medieval.
Yeah.
Getting Iron Age.
There's so many stories around the town of the children coming in with the horses and the donkeys and having the horses shod in here. And the old blacksmith Tom Lyons, he would be. There was a story of him being kicked in the face by a rowdy horse and losing teeth. And other people coming by the forge, and 1 minute they'd see Tom shodding a horse, and they'd go up the road, and they'd come back and they'd see him cutting somebody's hair, and it was as much a community space as it was a functional tool space.
Wow. I mean, if we look around towns, communities in Ireland now, practically every town, community, village has a bar, or has ideally a local shop. Maybe a lot of bigger ones would have a butcher or that kind of thing. Going back maybe sometime, would every community you have had or town have had a blacksmith or more even?
Every town would have had maybe 3 or more blacksmiths.
Right.
Ennisdiamond alone had 14 at its max. In Mountshannon, there was 3. And that's because blacksmithing isn't just horseshoeing or isn't just blade making. It's a multitude of different skills, and those are all different schools of craft. So you'd have the people doing the cartwheels to replace the carts, which would be like going to the tyre shop, Going
to the what shop, sorry?
Going to the tyre shop, to get your tyres replaced. So doing the cartwheels, and then there would be the farriers doing the horseshoeing, either making the horseshoes or what have you, and then you'd have the tool makers, or you'd have the fireplace managers, which were making the big cranes for the fireplaces for the turf fires, and they would all be specialised and different.
And that's a good point, because these are all very necessary, very everyday objects.
Absolutely, yeah.
Completely necessary for a long time of having society run, really,
Yeah, and you'd go to your. It's why the blacksmith was known as sort of having magic in their own right. Is they could curse or bless you. In the mythology of blacksmiths, that's known in Ireland, is it could either curse or bless you. And the idea is, if you pissed off the blacksmith, he could stop your farming tools. Yeah. He could stop forging your farming tools, and that spelt disaster. If you're a farmer in rural Ireland back in the day and the blacksmith didn't like you, is you didn't get the equipment you needed, and you could starve. It was as big or as small as that. And
seeing how this town had 3 blacksmiths back in the day. It still has 1. It's pretty good now. But there is fewer blacksmiths these days as compared to a few hundred years ago, let's say.
Yeah.
Seeing how you're continuing the trade. which some folk call a heritage trade.
Yeah.
And so are other people, and you're even maintaining a forge in a very traditional way. Do you consider yourself a custodian of heritage or culture or both within Ireland?
I try to be whatever I can be. And what I'm doing is a heritage craft and supporting heritage in Ireland. That's what I say I could do. And I try to do it as respectfully as possible by whatever means I can. And that means whatever it does. I go to schools and I talk about my craft. And I go to different sort of craft places and I talk about willow weaving or stonemasonry or blacksmithing. I made the basket there myself.
Did
the
you?
hammer basket.
Oh, I didn't know you did weaving as well.
Yeah, so I cut willow.
You're a jack of all trades, but you must have heard that before.
Master of none. Brewer, blacksmith, willow weaver, woodworker, you name it.
You build a house?
I'm hoping to make a clay house, straw bale.
Brilliant.
So I want to do a traditional straw bale house with a stone skirt to stop a rising damp, which would be the problem in Ireland. So big hat and high boots. That's the idea of housemaking.
But I mean, like, because it's an considered an older trade compared to an electrician or something like that, being a blacksmith. Does having an appreciation of history or heritage help in becoming one or wanting to be one, or is that a typical trait amongst blacksmiths, do you find?
No, absolutely. There's a massive admiration for heritage and heritage craft and the craft in general. Like it's like whenever you're getting into something, like when I got into blacksmithing, I could look at a gate and I know whether the gate was done well or badly, and as soon as you have the skill, you notice everything around you and you start noticing things more. And you'd see the gates around, and you start having deep admiration for the craftspeople before you because they had an immense amount of skill that were passed down to them, and a lot of those skills are lost. But like you could admire that from Limerick. There's lots of metalwork in Limerick, in the city alone, which are deeply admirable. The blacksmiths there had incredible amounts of skill. Or like when I was doing stonemasonry, you could look at a wall and you could see how the wall was done and see how they've put the stones together and whether they're done well or poorly. And it's the same thing with every other heritage craft. You see those things and you start having admiration for them, for the people before you. And for me, it's deeply honouring to be in a craft like that. Ooh. And to think that I might have the skill that they did in the future. Like I'm new to the craft. I don't have a deep amount of skill. I'd like to get better and better at the craft that I have, and that's my mission. I don't claim to be the best. I don't ever want to claim to be the best. I want to claim to be as good as I can be, and that's all I can be. And hope that my skills can be passed down to people who are better than me.
Okay, well, you got to be humble,
Yeah. You got to try.
Yeah. What was I going to say there? That was it. Yeah, I can't remember if it was while we were recording the podcast you mentioned this, or if it was before, or both. But you mentioned the Furnace Festival. What's that called again?
So myself and two friends of mine are starting to run the Cahaconnell Furnace Festival. So myself, Gwilym and Alan. Gwilym and Alan are incredible smelters from Irish Bloomery Iron. If you're interested in following them, they're on Instagram too. So just going to give a plug to you, lads.
How do you spell that? Bloomery?
Bloomery. I'm not very good at spelling, so I'm not going to do that live. But
we can figure it out at the end for the call out section. Yeah.
So they do the smelting festival with myself and a load of other blacksmiths. There's Jamie Triscoll, which is probably the best when it comes to understanding the material of Bog Iron. And Jamie's knowledge is very deep, very, very interesting person to talk to, and incredibly skilled at the craft. And loads of other blacksmiths that come from all across the country, and even other countries as well. So we have other people coming from Germany, from America, from all parts of the globe, coming to understand and to smelt together.
and to smelt together, and so yeah. So what exactly do you do there? It's at the festival.
Yeah, so we build the furnaces, which are made out of clay and sand. So we build them up 50-50 clay and sand. We've got bellows which are attached to that, and my friends Gwilym and Alan have been making all the charcoal out of wood. I've helped them in that process, but they're starting to outsource that now because it's just too much work for them. But it's very interesting nonetheless. And so you fill the furnace up with charcoal until it's very, very hot. And then you start doing equal parts charcoal and bog iron, which is like then crushed into dust. So 1 kilogram of charcoal, 1 kilogram of iron, and that's called a charge. And you do about 12 charges of those as the furnace sort of burns down the material. And at the end of it, after those 12 charges, that takes about an hour and a half, you're left with something called a bloom. A bloom is like thicker than a pancake, but it looks like a pancake. It's like a couple of centimetres, maybe 3-4 centimetres tall and round, and it's literally molten or like near molten iron. We pull that out and we squish that with a wooden mallet against a wooden stump, and we compress it to get rid of all of the slag, which is like molten glass, and we're trying to push that all out whilst it's still hot. And then we take it from that stump once it's squished down to an anvil with a sledgehammer, and whilst it's still hot enough, we sledge and squish that down even further until it's more condensed, so we can work with it, pop it in a forge. It can heat up efficiently in a forge, and we can sort of work it into tools, jewelry, or whatever we want to do.
Okay, so everything happens at this. Every process happens at this.
At the festival.
Event. You've got charcoal, smelting, to having it all the way broken down into tools or into jewellery. All that happens there.
Yeah. So a fella was doing a course with Gwilym and Alan, learning how to do the smelting. So during that, he did the smelt with me. And then afterwards, I showed him how to refine the material into a functional bar of bog iron. And it looks almost identical to steel, apart from the laminations, which I was talking about before, the sort of wood grain style sort of patterns that you have on the iron.
Right. And what time of year does this festival happen?
So that happens sort of, I think it was July, August. So it happens around that time. But there's loads of different festivals around Ireland.
Around both, yeah.
Around Ireland, which are focusing on bog iron smelting now, and to bring the skill back, because it was pretty much dead until about 30 years ago. When
specifically bog iron, the skill of that was, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, why is that, or what changed that?
Because everybody was very secretive about the process. And also deforestation was a massive issue with bog iron smelting. So there's a big furnace in Whitegate down that way, specifically as well. So in those areas, they would have taken a lot of bog iron, and they would have taken a lot of the forestry for the charcoal. And you have to use charcoal because it has no impurities. And if you're using coal, the iron will join in with the flux or with the slag, and the iron will be sapped away, so you're having a lot more wastage with the process. So you have to use wood, and they would have deforested lots of areas for the process. That's why a lot of Ireland is deforested, and because of the iron production.
Man, how did the skill become revived? Because now it sounds like there's a lot of events about it, and you use it and other people use it.
So
by the way, the name bog iron's got a lot of allure behind it, just for me, because I've never heard of it till today. But you got bog butter, all that's just got great allure to it.
It does. So there's lads across the country which are doing great work starting the festivals. We didn't start the festival in Carconnell. We're taking it over though, because there needs to be more people to help run it. Now it's becoming a bigger sort of process and a bigger festival. and it's very alluring. Like the whole process from start to finish, the sparking iron, the pulling the bog iron from the furnaces. It's so beautiful to watch and to see what our ancestors would have done. It's fascinating, and how much work went into it. That's what I love the most. Is it brings a massive amount of appreciation for me in the materials that I do work now. In that, back in the day, you couldn't waste bog iron. You could not, because it takes hours. To collect, to smelt, to refine, to forge. And it brings a lot more admiration to the pieces which do exist now, the blades, the axes, the armour. The skill that went into it was incredible.
Wonderful, groovy. No, I was asking about what time of year it is as much for myself as anyone listening, because I'll do my best to come next year.
Absolutely.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, do.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you there. It's an incredible opportunity as well for lots of people, people into blacksmithing or not alike. It's an incredible festival to see the heritage of Ireland, the heritage of what we would have done back in the day, and how we went from bronze to iron, and that whole process.
Right, yeah, groovy. I know sometimes, let's say if there's a particular material or piece of architecture that needs to be repaired. You used to be a stonemason before that. And let's say there's an antique mausoleum. Well, let's say there's a 17th, 19th century mausoleum, and they'll need antique stonemasons to be able to repair that because they have the old methods. Using the old methods of blacksmithing, do you or anyone you know ever have to go into an older protected building and repair or work on something that required the older knowledge? Yes.
So there's some lads in Cork who do incredible, amazing work when it comes to heritage craft. There's Leeside Forge, who is working in Cork, and Leeside Forge himself and his team are doing incredible work in both heritage tooling as well as heritage ironwork. There's also a forge just outside of Dublin, which is doing a lot of restoration work for the whole of Ireland. And in smaller scales, James O'Connor, the blacksmith I mentioned earlier, he does a lot of ironwork locally, does gates particularly, and wrought iron gates. So he works specifically with wrought iron rather than steel, in hopes that we can get it known that the repair work needs to be done by blacksmiths. So as blacksmiths, we're having an incredible problem in that the jobs that blacksmiths should do are going to fabrication work instead.
Do you ever have a real ready command happening where like lads with trying to weld
Yeah. So we're having a bunch of problems with fabricators fabricating steel onto wrought iron and doing bodge jobs, not doing the heritage standard of repair, and that's causing a lot of us blacksmiths to lose jobs, who are doing heritage style repair work like that, and it's an ongoing conversation we're having at the moment, in that blacksmiths aren't getting paid. They aren't getting picked up to the jobs because the fabricators do the job so much cheaper. However, there's not enough admiration for the craft for us to get paid for it.
Even on that note, I'm quite sure wrought iron gates, or at least some architectural features on a protected building, it won't be just, it could be the gateway, the entranceway could be protected as well. And if that's the case, I don't know the law or any regulation or anything like that, but I think you're supposed to have it, repair it into the...
You're supposed to, but there's no regulation on it.
Okay.
There's no real regulation. So a lot of the blacksmiths which can do the work aren't given the jobs.
Yeah.
And that means we're out of work, and we're already a very difficult job to keep sustained, especially for those heritage crafts people. So the fact that there's no enforcement in that means that the jobs aren't being done as well as they could do, and they're not being done to heritage standard. There's some places which are, but most of those places have to be registered, and a lot of the places that are having those repairs done aren't. Yeah.
It's a tricky thing.
It is, and it's an ongoing conversation with, as I said, the blacksmiths who are doing those repair jobs, and something that I'd like to bring to light as well for the blacksmiths around, to make sure that they get the work as best as they could.
Yeah. And do you ever do showcases or anything for Heritage Weeks for in August? Those are typically in August.
Yeah. So I've done a few Heritage Week events. I went to Ballynockan, the Granite Village, and did a blacksmithing demonstration there at one of their on one of their bolt forges, which wasn't as efficient as my own forge there. But it was a great opportunity to work with granite stonemasons. I've got a deep connection to granite coming from Cornwall. I used to live in a granite house myself, an old granite farmhouse from the 1700s.
Are those comfortable granite?
Gorgeous,
really?
Incredible heat.
Yeah.
It was made out of parts of old ships and the granite, so the beams from old ships. So
cool.
It was incredible. Yeah. But yeah, worked with the Ballynockan lads, the stonemasons there, incredibly skilled stonemasons and stone carvers. And then this year I worked with Common Knowledge to do a talk on blacksmithing in Ennistimon.
All right, groovy. Yeah. That's where the did you ever see the puka statue? It's not quite in Ennistimon town. It was supposed to be in Ennistimon town. It ended up in Karen Village in the Michael Cusack Heritage Centre.
Oh yes, I think I have seen it. Yeah.
It was supposed to be in Ennistimon, but I think the townspeople didn't like it, so they had to put it elsewhere.
It's a fairly full-on statue. But yeah, no, gorgeous work. I've talked to a lot of different craftspeople as well. I got to know some bronze casters as well, who do incredible work around the coast there too. They do some of their work are put in the Kilbaha Gallery, and the Kilbaha Gallery are incredible for their statues and artwork.
Where's Kilbaha Gallery?
Kilbaha is on the west coast at the names. Oh God. Where is it?
Is it in Clare?
It is in Clare. It's where the Shannon comes out.
Oh, I don't know what it's called, but
It's
be able to see it on the map, I guess.
Yeah. Where the lighthouse is, near where the lighthouse is, on the coast.
That way, anyways.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, amazing metal workers, different work entirely.
Is there any rivalries between any types of traditional craftspeople or metal workers? Like, is it ever like the blacksmith and bronze workers just can't see eye to eye or this kind of thing, or is
absolutely not?
Is this just fantasies in my own mind?
Absolute fantasy. Absolute, you're dreaming, mate. No, blacksmiths, woodworkers, stonemasons would have all worked together. Traditionally, we would have done everything together. If you go to traditional stone walls, you'll see little holes that are inside the stone, and that was from blacksmiths' stone lifting tools, which were inserted into the stone for them to pulley and rope them up to castles or up to different places, and those would have been forge tools from blacksmiths. Or, for instance, all woodworkers would have to have tools, and those would have been made by the blacksmith. Or, here and there, but like every sort of heritage craftsperson would have been working with one another to make what they need. And that's the self-sustainability of crafts, is that it would have been a circular thing, is everybody would have been working together to help each other in a community, and that community vibe has sort of died out, and that's what I'm trying to do with my own page, is to remind people that everybody's working together, and this whole notion that everybody's pinned against each other is only fucking capitalist. Like,
yeah,
it's just capitalist. It's we're all working against each other, we're all trying to earn our own money. Fucking bollocks. Absolutely not. We're all working together. We all should be working together, because when you help one person in the craft and whenever everybody helps each other, we are elevated as a craft entirely. And our craft gets better, and we get better, and our skills get more advanced, and we understand the materials more, and we can do more together. And that's what I believe, is that we can work together as a community to elevate each other.
Groovy, right on.
Yeah.
I'm glad you swore before I did, because I was hesitant to do so. I have to declare explicit content of this podcast, but you did already, so I can phrase the question the way I like to. I actually asked this question earlier on. What's the biggest pain in the neck? What's the biggest pain in the ass with with working as a blacksmith, you know?
I hate being assumed that I make knives, or I make swords, or I make battle axes, or I'm a farrier. Like, that's all I ever get every fucking day.
What's a farrier again?
A farrier is a person who shoes horses.
Yeah.
I
Is farrier a last name by any chance?
Yeah, I'd say it would be. Yeah,
Probably. Yeah. I
all
feel
of
like
the, all of the
I've heard
crafts
that
would have
one.
been turned into names. Like.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'm not any of that.
Yeah.
I'm a tool maker. I'm a jeweler. I'm a sculptor. I'm an artist. And I do all of that. But every single day, can you make a knife for me? Can you make a sword for me? Oh, I'd love a battle axe. Who the fuck wants a battle axe? Like, I asked a lad once why he wanted one, and he was like, I don't know, want to cut some melons up? I'm like, all right, great. You want to cut a melon up in your back garden? I don't want my work being hung up in a wall and then used to cut melons. You know?
Yeah.
I want my work to be used every day, practically, or an item of beauty, and that's what my craft is. That and entitled people coming into the forge.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of them in the summer that come by because my forge is on the road side, and I welcome a lot of people.
That's why you might hear some car noises every now and then.
Exactly,
by the way,
yeah. Like I love when people come in because they can sit down, have a chat with me, see what the craft is. It's absolutely fantastic. Love that side of my work. The problem is when people come in and they ask me to do something on the anvil for them whilst they're filming me.
Yeah.
I've had that in the past of people coming in and being like, oh, can you hammer on the anvil a little bit? And I'm like, absolutely fucking not. I'm doing my work. I'm not a monkey. I'm not a circus monkey.
Like those animations in Skyrim that have like
absolutely,
some forging animations.
They're asking me to do something on the anvil. I'm like, no, I'm working. or alternatively, there's some people with a bit of dosh in their pocket who think they're all that and a bag of chips, and they come in and they feel entitled enough to go past the barrier and try and get real close to me whilst I'm working. I'm like, what are you doing? You haven't asked my name. You haven't asked who I am. You're coming up to my workspace when I've lined it off. Excuse me. Like, I don't care whether you're a big businessman or the king of fucking Mars. You ask my name, you ask what I'm doing, and you respect my space, or you get out. And that's it.
I mean, it's dangerous. I mean, it's not. If you don't know what you're doing, it can be dangerous.
If you don't know what you're doing, and if you're treating my space with disrespect, like you would any workspace, you can leave. Like, it's the door's there. You don't do that with any workspace. And for some reason, because it's on the side of the road, people think they're entitled to do it. So I have a bit of a problem with that. But, you know, it is what it is. And I have to battle with the space that I'm in.
Yeah.
And I get complaints by the locals when I close the door, and I get complaints by people when I open the door. So I can't really make anybody happy. Bear traps. I actually have a rabbit trap right there on the wall.
Where is it?
It's right in.
Oh, that one. I see.
Yeah, so I could put that as like a trap on the floor. Yeah. For anybody.
I mean,
that's it.
Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you have one? You know.
Exactly. Have one. Yeah. Use it.
Yeah. So tell me, Reece, what's the future? What's your plans for 2025 or for going forward?
I have plans to do more collaborations, but I don't really go beyond that. I want to get better as a craftsperson, and I want to highlight more craftspeople, and that's my focus. Other than that, I don't really have any other focuses or any other desires or any other wishes. I love my work and I love what I do, and I want to get better at it. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do more smelting festivals. I'm going to increase my skill and travel around to different blacksmiths to increase my skill in different aspects of the craft. But other than that, I'm doing my own thing. My page is growing more and more every day, and I don't like the term influencer. I like being a creator, I like being a craftsperson, but I like being a fucking human above all else, and I like to treat other people like humans too. So as the page grows, I'd like to stay human, stay being the person I am, and learn. I don't know enough. I'm not very knowledgeable in my craft, and I need to be grounded in that. I don't know everything. I'm really dumb when it comes to a load of things. I like to experiment and I like to fuck up because I learn from it. Yeah. And the biggest lesson in blacksmithing is failure. A lot of failure happens in the forge, and it's the best lesson you can learn from it. And if you want to go into blacksmithing, learn to fail because you will over and over and over again until you succeed. And when you do, you've found your skill, you've found your niche.
I mean, whether you like to call yourself one or not, you are kind of a content creator in a way, you know?
I'm a content creator, and I create...
rather than influencer.
Rather than influencer, but other people have started coining me that, and there's people who are recognizing me in the towns sometimes every so often, and it's strange. It's very strange, and I've always been very close to myself, you know? I like to keep to myself. I like to stay in a small town, and I like a country vibe, you know?
Yeah.
I'm a proper Kurdish man. I like the country.
Does the accent get stronger when you go back there or that?
I can't get out of it now. A little bit. It depends who I'm around. So there's different friends I have. There's a potter in Cornwall which I talk to. I didn't actually know her until I had the Instagram a couple of months ago. Ken Carncraft. She's wonderful, but she has a very nice little subtle Cornish accent, and that'll come out when I'm messaging her or talking to her. And
it'll come out in the messages.
It would, yeah. Like she has this little Cornish lilt, and I'd be speaking back, and my sort of Cornish accent will come out a little bit more.
Right.
But a lot of my accent is actually being softened by East Clare as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I've got this weird old mixture of like East Clare and Cornish now.
Well, I think it's terrific because, even the East Clare accent is not especially common around the rest of Ireland, I wouldn't think, and the Cornish accent not in the rest of, that.
And most people wouldn't know the Cornish accent unless you spotted it, sort of pointed it out to them. Like it's soft. It's like every pirate accent you've ever heard, but soft. Like if I take off the harsh Cornish sort of pirate, you'd get like quite a nice soft accent. You know, quite nice, quite subtle. And I've taken up some of that, you know, in my speak. So when I'm talking normally, you'd hear it slightly, but you wouldn't hear it a lot, you know. And then the little subtleties of East Clare, like it's hard to avoid when you're always around people, you know, and the different things you say or whatever. But it's a lovely accent, East Clare. It's really, really nice.
No, East Clare is terrific. To be honest, it's quite different from West Clare, and West Clare gets quite a lot of clout. I mean, it's at the sea. It's terrific there. Yeah. But East Clare really does have a totally different vibe to it. There's actually, did you know this? There's a County Clare kind of tourism board, but there's specifically East County Clare tourism.
The Wild Atlantic Way and all of that.
Yeah.
It is gorgeous on the West Coast, but it's not. It doesn't catch me as much as East Clare, which is funny because, like, you'd imagine somebody from Cornwall would like the coast, would like the beaches, but like it's funny. The beaches are very different in West Clare in comparison to back home where I'm from, and it doesn't have the same charm that would have captured me back in the day in Cornwall. But the lakeside and the areas around East Clare hold a little bit of similarity to what I would have been around near Bodmin or around some of the sort of areas, the heather and things like that, and it really captivates me and captures me, and I've fallen deeply in love with where I'm living.
Because where we are right now, right in view from your forge is Loch Derg, right?
Yeah, Loch Derg, and then over the lake you can even see Tip.
Oh really?
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Just near your side, yeah, of
yeah,
course.
Yeah, and you can see all the mountains. I think it was gorgeous the other day with the snow, as you saw the snow-capped mountains.
Did you get snow here?
We did, yeah.
But we didn't get any in Mullingar.
We got a little bit, but not much.
Tiny bit. Actually, we only got a tiny bit, didn't we? Yeah, tiny bit.
But no, it was lovely. It was really nice. But the view is incredible. You've got the lake right beside. So in the summer, when things get really hot in the forge, because I have to do smaller projects, because otherwise I bake my arse off. Like, I can go down to the lake and have a dip in the lake, have a swim, cool down, come back to the forge.
Right.
It's wonderful.
Idyllic, eh?
Yeah, absolutely idyllic. And in the winter, the lake is gorgeous. The fog over the lake is beautiful. And yeah, I live right on the lakeside. So when I come out of my door, the first thing I see is the lake.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
You got it pretty well here.
Doing fairly well. Doing fairly well. Yeah.
Reece, I was going to say, 'cause I think we'll leave this off in a minute, but you mentioned your page there, and I think you said it was Instagram. But if you
Absolutely.
want to let everybody know what's the exact, what's your handle on Instagram or your other social medias, where can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so my name is Reece Saul Foster, like Solomon, but short. So my name is Saul, Saul Forged. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook. I've started a YouTube, but I'm not good at it.
It's a different ballgame.
Hard
It
to
really
manage.
is.
Hard to manage the different social medias. And I've just started Blue Sky as well, which is like X, but the new sort of platform for it. So I'm on Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and you can find me under Saul Forged.
So forward. All right, Reece, thanks a million. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for showing us all this stuff there.
Thank you so much.
I want to also thank Miles for driving us down to Mountshannon and for producing this episode. And I'd like to thank you for listening. Thanks for listening, and see you somewhere else in the Weird Ireland podcast.